don't think you have enough exposure? You have, what, 158,000 Bitcoin holdings in MicroStrategy? You want more?
You can never have too much Bitcoin. I think the industry moves to the next level and we 10x from here.
Michael Saylor, thanks. Us is the founder and executive chairman, Michael Saylor, along with our own Morgan Brennan. Michael, it's always good to have you. So you don't think you have enough exposure? You have, what, 158,000 Bitcoin holdings in MicroStrategy? You want more?
You can never have too much Bitcoin. We're big Bitcoin bulls. Our thesis is that Bitcoin is digital property, but without the risks and liabilities of commercial real estate. It's a digital commodity without the risks and the liabilities of gold. It's a digital tech investment without the risks and the liabilities of big tech. And so we're bullish.
You know, it's funny. People sometimes forget that you're like an enterprise software company, and I noticed that you're doing some new partnerships on AI with Microsoft, and I wonder if that kind of good news gets overshadowed, or any kind of news about your fundamental business gets overshadowed by just being a proxy for Bitcoin.
We're really excited about our partnership with Microsoft and AI. We're the first BI company to put AI into our product line, and it provides great artificial intelligence boost to our business intelligence business. We're going to use it to grow the business by acquiring new customers, and also it's accelerating cloud adoption within our customer base.
Yeah, Michael, it's Morgan, and of course that business also helps enable you to buy more Bitcoin. The fact that we have seen Bitcoin rally as strongly as it has over the past month, I mean, the SEC seems likely to approve a spot Bitcoin ETF after that key court loss. Does the introduction of an ETF help or hurt investor appetite for MicroStrategy specifically?
Well, I think it's going to help. It's going to accelerate adoption, and it's also going to accelerate institutional awareness and education efforts of Wall Street to teach the 99% of the investors that don't know about Bitcoin what it's all about. MicroStrategy is a differentiated offering. I think spot Bitcoin ETF is a great thing for investors, but we don't charge a fee. We use intelligent leverage, and we can generate a tax-deferred Bitcoin premium for our investors. So for people that are really long-term bulls on Bitcoin, we represent a pretty attractive option or alternative to a spot Bitcoin ETF.
Sounds like you think MicroStrategy as a stock is going to continue to command a Bitcoin-related premium then.
Well, if you're not charging a fee and you're generating a premium and you're holding it over the long term, then one would think that it'll be valued at a premium versus the underlying asset.
Michael, Bob Pisani here. Bitcoin is going to be having a halving next year. That's a rare event. Can you sort of educate the viewers on what happens when that occurs and what, if any, effect that'll have on Bitcoin's price?
Well, most of the natural sellers of Bitcoin in the market right now are Bitcoin miners, and they have to sell to pay their electricity bill and their capital cost and retire their debt. That's about $1 billion a month worth of selling into the market. The protocol forces that to be cut in half as of about next April, late April. So you're going to see $12 billion of natural selling per year converted into $6 billion of natural selling a year, at the same time as things like spot Bitcoin ETFs increase the demand for Bitcoin. So that's why all of us are fairly bullish over the next 12 months. Demand's going to increase, supply is going to contract, and this is fairly unprecedented in the history of Wall Street.
Just to follow up on the Bitcoin ETF, can you sort of give us a sense of when you think, presumably you think the SEC is going to be forced to approve this. Can you give us a time scale on when this might happen?
Well, I think the Bloomberg analysts that cover this, they're of the opinion that it's highly likely to happen by early January. I think it'll happen when it happens. But long term, I guess the most important point to be made is institutions are adopting Bitcoin. It's highly likely that it will happen, if not by first quarter of next year, at some point in the coming 12 months. And we know the halving is coming. So if you've got a 12-month to 48-month time horizon, this is a pretty ideal entry point into the asset.
Michael, I want to ask you about another regulatory change that's afoot. The Financial Accounting Standards Board voted unanimously to adopt a new standard that's going to require businesses to use fair value accounting for Bitcoin and other crypto assets. This could be meaningful for MicroStrategy. You just reported a loss, an impairment loss tied to Bitcoin in your earnings last night. I think that number is now ballooned to more than $2 billion in impairment losses since you started holding Bitcoin on your balance sheet. Expecting more guidelines before the end of this year and then an implementation in 2025. What does this mean for MicroStrategy? What does this mean for companies more broadly? Does it make it more attractive to start to hold Bitcoin?
Long term, this is going to open the door for corporations to adopt Bitcoin as a treasury asset and create shareholder value with their balance sheets. I mean, the big dilemma in the market today is the Magnificent Seven. 7 companies are generating all the shareholder returns, and 7,000 companies are struggling to create shareholder value. MicroStrategy's secret is we're leveraging our balance sheet as well as our P&L. We've got more than $5 billion of assets on our balance sheet, and Bitcoin is growing at 3 or 4 times the cost of capital. So imagine what happens if other companies are able to use their balance sheets as assets instead of liabilities. Right now, the existing accounting, it favors using credit and sovereign debt, and the after-tax yield of credit isn't keeping up with cost of capital, and the result is most corporations pursue dilutive strategies of acquisitions, share buybacks, dividends, which are taxable, and they can't really hold billions and billions of dollars of capital and beat the cost of capital and generate shareholder returns. So this FASB accounting allows you to mark up and down the asset. It allows you to recognize investor gains. You know, if Berkshire Hathaway didn't have Apple, it wouldn't be a winning stock, but it's not practical for 1,000 companies to hold Apple stock as a treasury reserve asset. It is practical for them to start buying Bitcoin, and FASB's accounting opens the door for that.
But you know, they're just so, I know you're not a stranger to some of the Bitcoin criticisms, but Michael, even lately, we're seeing Sam Bankman-Fried on trial for fraud, of course. You're seeing Israel cracking down on some Binance accounts related to Hamas. I mean, there are still bad and dark applications of this cryptocurrency. And I wonder if you just think institutional investors are done. They think of it as a method for terrorist financing or just for fraud.
I think that the liabilities are the early crypto cowboys, the crypto tokens, the unregistered securities, the unreliable crypto custodians. For the industry to move to the next level, we need to migrate to adult supervision. We're going to need big banks to become the crypto custodians. We're going to need Wall Street to take a role. And we need to rationalize away from the 100,000 crypto tokens, you know, yo-yo coins that people are manipulating to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an asset without an issuer. It is the one universally recognized protocol that's a commodity in the space. So when banks on Wall Street and responsible custodians are managing Bitcoin and the industry takes its eyes away from all of the shiny little tokens that have distracted and demolished shareholder value, I think the industry moves to the next level and we 10x from here.
Michael Saylor now exclusively is MicroStrategy co-founder and executive chairman, Michael Saylor. Michael, great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Morgan.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about earnings, because in your core software business, software licenses revenue climbed 23%, subscription services revenue up 46%, but really the focus from the market, as per usual, since MicroStrategy is the largest publicly traded holder of Bitcoin, is the fact that your impairment loss for Bitcoin was so much smaller than it has been in recent quarters. Walk me through the results and the flywheel between these two companies within the company.
Sure. We have progressively built up a Bitcoin position up to 140,000 Bitcoin over the past 2.5 years. When Bitcoin traded from 66,000 all the way down to 16,000, we took an impairment loss. And in the course of the last 12 weeks, that Bitcoin position has traded up $2 billion in fair market value. So, of course, when it's trading down, there are tax consequences and indefinite intangible write-offs. But when it's trading up, we reverse some of the tax accounting. The indefinite intangible treatment hasn't changed any. But I think the short of it is the software business is very stable, and it's a cash cow. And we use it to pay our interest on our debt and to acquire more Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin itself is our belief that Bitcoin is the ultimate digital scarcity network. And because Bitcoin has been moving up about 50% a year on average over the last 3 years, the real key with Bitcoin is just to be able to hold on to it and stomach the volatility. And we have conditioned our shareholders and our bondholders to understand that we're long-term hodlers. And because everybody is aligned in that interest, we're able to weather that volatility. And we end up doing very, very well as Bitcoin recovers.
Yeah, and Bitcoin is recovering, though. We're still well off the all-time highs. We're up something like 70% since the start of the year. What do you attribute that recovery to?
I think right now there are two twin drivers, right? There's the macroeconomic concern about inflation, and as inflation takes place, people lose confidence in fiat currencies, and that means they start to realize that everything valued on cash flows is a currency derivative, and Bitcoin is not valued on cash flows. It's in a digital scarcity. The failure of the banks, Silvergate Bank, Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, now First Republic Bank, causes people in the Western world to start to lose a little bit of faith in the banking system. And they remember that Bitcoin is a bank in cyberspace run by incorruptible software. So the phrase "be your own bank" has emerged as an investment idea in the United States, but it's really a matter of financial survival elsewhere. And so the combination of that concern about inflation and counterparty risk with banks is driving Bitcoin's adoption. It's also being driven, by the way, by the crypto crackdown. And as people lose faith in crypto exchanges, crypto securities, and cryptocurrencies, there's a natural migration of capital from those crypto ecosystems into Bitcoin, since it's viewed as the risk-off safe haven asset of the crypto space.
Yeah, and certainly it's being handled by regulators a little bit differently, at least right now, still being classified as a commodity, whereas the SEC is starting to look at more aggressively other cryptocurrencies as a security. You mentioned the banks. We do talk about the 3 banks that failed, including most recently First Republic. But as you mentioned, Silvergate, it doesn't always get brought up, I think in part because it voluntarily liquidated. But it was really the first example of a highly specialized bank, massive uninsured deposit base, mismatch in duration, questions around interest rate risk management. And it arguably set the stage for the SVB run that we saw just a few days later. I want to go back to comments that you made about a month before that happened, the last time you and I spoke. Take a listen.
The institutions that were improperly constructed, I think they do banking the right way in a responsible fashion, and they're a good citizen for the ecosystem.
Your thoughts now?
Well, I think what happened to Silvergate is unfortunate. I'll note that they weren't seized by the regulators. They're not in receivership. They actually were able to return all their deposits, and they're working out of that situation in a responsible fashion. And so my hat is off to them. I think it's very, very difficult time for any bank that had a large portfolio of long-dated bonds and interest rates surging from almost nothing to 5% in 12 months, I think is largely responsible for the difficulties that the banking sector has undergone.
Yeah, and you did have that retirement of a Silvergate loan at a 22% discount. But with Silvergate out of the picture, with Signature now essentially out of the picture, or at least reclaimed by another bank, what does it mean for the banking landscape, for MicroStrategy and for others in the Bitcoin space? How does this now evolve and change?
I think for those that are acquiring and holding Bitcoin, it doesn't make a big difference. I think the real significance of these on-ramps to crypto being shut down is that as people lose faith in certain stable coins, or they lose faith in crypto exchanges, or if they lose faith in crypto asset securities, like the crypto tokens that the SEC is currently going after, they exit those positions, and since they're not going to withdraw their money back into fiat banks because there are no off-ramps, the natural trade is to trade all those crypto assets for Bitcoin and then put their monetary energy into the Bitcoin network. So I think this is all fairly bullish for Bitcoin. People are trying to figure out what they can trust, and Bitcoin is the most trustworthy crypto asset. It's the most trustworthy crypto network. There is no second best.
Michael Saylor, always great to get your thoughts on this topic. Appreciate the time today. And MicroStrategy up 130%, more than 130% year to date. Joining us now exclusively